Hello and welcome back to Where Are All My Friends? If you're watching and not listening, yes, I got a haircut. If you're listening, imagine me with a haircut. This week's episode is with Rob Laska, the singer of the band Valley, and this was such a cool episode. I've been a fan of Valley, but admittedly kind of like a passive fan. I found them on Spotify, I would listen to songs, but I never did the deep dive. And then one day it kind of hit me, I was like, this is sick. Why do I not know more about them? So as I start digging in and seeing more of their visuals and everything that ties together, it's like, all right, I just need to hit them up. So Rob was down to join the podcast and share the entire story of the band and the come up and their writing process and some of his inspirations and how he got to where he was at. So overall, it was just this really fun episode. And if you listen to the pod enough, you know how much I like to make new friends and hear these stories in real time. And that was exactly what this was. And it was just so rad. I'm so impressed by them as a band, so much more so than I already was after hearing the story. So if you've heard of them, you're going to love this episode. And if you haven't heard of them, you're welcome. You just found a new incredible band. And it's a great conversation, so I think you'll enjoy it. Let's get into it. Where are all my friends? Rob Laska, Valley. This is cool. I'm excited. I've been a fan of the band really just by the internet. I found the music. It had to have been like a Spotify discovery algorithm or something like that. And I don't know, I'm embarrassed to admit it, but sometimes you'll find a band, you'll throw it in your playlist, you'll listen, but then it kind of just stays there. And I had this moment where I was listening again and I was like, why don't I know anything else about this band? This is sick. And then I kind of look at the Instagram and I look at the visuals and I'm like, this is very intentional. This is very thought out. There's something here. And that's really where I'm at with this. So it is an honor that you were down to do this. And I'm so excited to actually kind of learn the story in real time because I need to be educated. I've been sleeping on this for too long as a passive fan.
What an intro. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, that's honestly probably the best intro I've ever gotten on a podcast or an interview. So kudos to you.
Dang. Well, shoot. Awesome. Well, the way that I like to do the podcast is obviously here, it's just you, Rob, singer of the band, for a listener who doesn't know. And I think that'll actually be fun because most of the format with this podcast is like a one-on-one conversation. But I really like to start it at your early days or kind of where that thing clicks, like where you went from living your life to finding that passion, whatever that is, be it music or maybe it was something before that got it there. And like that early kind of time of you figuring it all out and putting it together and then maybe lead me up to Valley starting.
Mm-hmm. I actually enjoy telling this story. And this is not to I guess, pigeonholed kind of a stereotype or something. But I feel like we're living in a day and age where like artists, projects, and bands kind of build up and form. And I'm not going to say in an unorganic way. It's just very different. I think with like the digital age that we're just like fully sunken now. You know, bands and people meet through DMs and through, you know, it's such an online based thing. And I think with Valley meeting, it happened in a very organic way. It happened not through like we were in high school in 2012, 2013. Like we still didn't really like Instagram was happening, Facebook was happening, but like we weren't like obsessed and on those platforms all the time. We were like communicating in person. So like me and Alex, who plays bass in our band, went to high school together. And then Kara and Mickey. So Kara plays drums and Mickey plays guitar and sings and stuff. They went to high school together. So we were actually in two separate kind of suburban towns just outside Toronto. So we're suburb kids, kind of grew up in a more blue collar, I guess, environment. Yeah, me and Alex were in high school and just were recording and learning about music. And, you know, we were in band together and kind of like jazz nerds. And we decided to record some music. And my sister's friend, out of all people, like worked at a studio. He had like a part-time kind of job at a studio, and he booked us like a day to just come in and record and just have fun. And basically me and Alex show up and Kara and Nikki are there because they had their own thing going on. And we basically got double booked by accident, like complete fluke. And we just showed up and we were like, we're supposed to be like in the studio right now. Like, why are you here? And they're like, but we're supposed to be here. So Steve, the engineer, just messed up and double booked us. And then that's kind of like the Spark Notes version of how Valley met, which is crazy. And there's so many like
That's
through
so
line. It's
nuts.
very nuts. Like for this day and age, I always kind of pinch myself and forget like we met in a very serendipitous and like kind of like spiritual way, which I love. Like it's a fun
Yeah.
story.
Well, when you think about the layers to that too, it's like, okay, cool, you meet, you have the same taste in music, but there's so much more that goes into being in a band and becoming partners and essentially a business.
100%.
So the fact that that serendipitous moment brought y'all together and then you clicked on so many levels that need to be there to do it right, it's just like,
It's crazy.
wow, there's something in the universe. I don't
Oh,
know.
100%. We believe that wholly with that story, and like not even that. Like there's so many through lines attached to that story. So one of the first songs that me and Alex ever sang together and covered in high school was a song called "Everywhere" by Fleetwood Mac, and that was the first song that
Sick.
we like showed Kara and Mickey in the studio, being like, "Hey, we're working on this Fleetwood Mac cover." And the craziness with that is like we watched this like Sound City documentary that we were obsessed with, like in high school, and like Fleetwood Mac is a huge band for us. I know they're a little bit beyond like the new TikTok era, and a lot of maybe younger kids don't. I don't even know if they know Fleetwood Mac, but there's so much like energy, and that band kind of just like really spoke to us early on in our days because they were a co-ed band that also were two people put together. Like it's crazy.
Were they
Yeah,
really?
it's like
I didn't know
it's
that.
so nuts. Like they basically met kind of at Sound City, and like Stevie Nicks and like Lindsey Buckingham had their own project called Buckingham Nicks, and they like kind of met at Sound City and then started Fleetwood Mac together, and they joined. And just there's so many through lines with that band and our band, and the fact that it was co-ed. Like Kara plays drums for us, and she's a badass and so awesome. And I don't know, it's just like so many just kind of things that like zooming out, I was like, man, we were really meant to like meet that day. And like the fact that we showed them a Fleetwood Mac song, it just like really all came together. So yeah. And by the way, like speaking of like Facebook and stuff, like back in 2012, 2013, which is scary because that seems so long ago now, like we didn't have any mutual friends on Facebook or anything. Like when we got double booked, like I remember adding Mickey and Kara on Facebook, and it's like no mutual friends. So like it was like very much random, which I'm so thankful for. I don't know what the hell we'd be doing if that moment didn't happen. So to be honest, shout out Steve, the engineer who was my sister's friend, who just happened to make that really silly mistake by booking us. And
okay, so my instant next follow-up question though is, you guys were both in bands doing your thing. I would have to imagine you were passionate about what you were doing, planning, whatever. So there had to have been like a moment where you were like, okay, I guess actually let's put our projects on pause and like, let's do this thing together, right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is like how easy of a transition or like end it was. And I mean, there's a few factors that play into it. Like me and so Alex was the band that me and Alex had. Alex was kind of like the fifth member. He was the producer engineer. He was kind of like the manager too. Like he was kind of just helping us with a lot. And we were already kind of fizzling out, like just that kind of classic scenario where, you know, one person wants to go to college, one person, like this was right after high school. So people were kind of coming to terms and like with what they want to do. And they're all dear friends of ours, but you know, we kind of drifted apart naturally and it just happened. So me and Alex were already kind of looking for a way out. We were like, okay, this band isn't going to last. I love these guys to death, but like we need to continue because we have such a like burning desire and passion to keep doing this. So that kind of was our parachute, our like kind of moment to just kind of jump off the ledge and hopefully, you know, meet some people. And Karen and Mickey came in the picture, and Karen and Mickey were kind of just doing more, like cover stuff, like kind of, you know, like let's do a bunch of covers and put them on YouTube, and kind of, they grew up in that very specific era. I mean, we were a part of it too, but we were more of like a indie kind of rock pop band, but they were doing the whole, like, let's cover songs, just put them up on YouTube and maybe someone will discover us. Like that was,
which honestly, I think is smart. Like it's a decent model for getting discovered. But they had enough faith, like the dynamic and the energy was good enough where they're like, all right, cool. Like we could go back and do covers if we need to, but let's see what's up
for
here.
sure. And we also saw, I think we were at a point in our lives where we saw each other's potential. So, you know, they looked at, you know, maybe me and Alex, and, you know, we came from a very kind of indie rock background. So I was introducing them to a lot of music they've never heard of. And then Mickey and Kara had a really strong understanding of pop songwriting and the craft of songwriting. So they were kind of being like, hey, like we can, you guys are kind of bringing these like 5 minute like indie rock songs, and we have these like 2.5 minute, 3 minute constructed pop songs that take a lot of work to craft and make perfect. So yeah, I don't know. There was just such a nice, beautiful artistic trade off, and that's kind of how Valley like started just rolling. And that was 7 years later now, which is crazy. We're here. 7 years, I think. Yes, of
Well,
2013, 2014. Yeah, whatever it is. Long enough.
that's another thing that I wanted to ask you about was I feel like I talk about this topic a lot, but I think it really does deserve being talked about and really stopping and taking a second to think about this. But like
Mhm.
the internet makes everything look like instant success.
Oh yeah.
You see people popping off, you
Yeah.
see like any type of success or levels up, and you're just like, damn, must be nice. I want that. And like, yeah, it's a good thing to want. But that's some time in the game
Mhm.
to get to the spot now, because I see it clicking now. Like as I look at everything you guys are doing and it's all coming together and you have such a defined image and
Thank you so
brand.
much.
But that's 7 years. That's 7 years of putting that together, huh?
It's 7 years of discovery, and yeah, I think that just also comes from our mentality early on. I remember when we first got together in Mickey's basement, and we just like started discussing kind of goals and like where are we going to take this. Once we started feeling like a little bit of success, or like a song got like 500 plays, that was like the biggest deal. When we
Yeah.
got like even a 500 clicks or whatever, like we were like, okay, man, like this might become something. So early on, we always told ourselves like we have to, our favorite artists that changed our lives took the long game. And it's not the long game as in like, you're going to artistically suffer more, but it's just you have to put in your 10,000 hours. And I think that has always ring true for us. Some of our closest collaborators and our favorite artists had to do that. It was a journey, and like there's so much of their past that they might be embarrassed about, or they were trying to find themselves and whatever. But if you can get over those humps of like, oh, everything has to be perfect from the start, and like I don't deserve, or like I don't deserve the room to like self-discover and figure out what I really want publicly, like it can get really kind of messy. So we just kind of committed to the fact that, hey, we're this band right now, but like we're committing to just growth and like change, and we want to build this the right way and just like really take the time to figure out what we want to be. And that took up to 6-7 years. And like even now we're in a place where we feel like we know what Valley is, but like that's going to change in a year from now when we make another EP or another record, or it's just constant evolution, I think, is the name of the game. I think that's why we reference bands like Fleetwood Mac, or even newer like Coldplay, for instance, is a huge influence for us because they've managed to do that. They've been a band since 1999, and they're still relevant. They'll sell out shows around the world for the rest of their lives, and I think that has to do a lot with putting in the 10,000 hours and like really working from literally 1999 and finding ways to grow and change, but still remain relevant across like all generations. I think that's the real beauty of like taking the time to build your artistry and project. Is you want to be in a place where someone just that's growing up in grade school or high school can listen to your music and have it impact them, but also you want to impact someone who's working in their office job and they're in their 30s, and maybe someone who's just retired and is in their 60s. Like you want to be able to hit as many people as possible. And I think that is where the 10,000 hours comes in, because you just need to kind of develop and build and change and not be like stuck to like one idea of what you can be.
I love that so much. And I'm such a huge believer of the 10,000
Yeah.
hours theory. So
Don't
the fact
stop.
that you said that, I was like,
All I ever
yo.
tell people, we get messages now being like just asking for advice, or just overall, just like amazing people message us and just say, hey, like I'm just looking for some career advice and stuff. And there's so many things you could say, but the real simple one is just like, don't ever stop. Like if you really do it long enough, things will fall out of the sky for you. I really believe in that theory with songwriting. Chris Martin says it all the time. Like his best songs just kind of showed up. It just felt like they just fell out of the sky, and he just went on the piano and it just came out. But you only get to that point when you've put in the 10,000 hours, when you've put in all that work prior. Yeah, stuff is just going to kind of come because you've you've really worked up to be in a position where you can catch those ideas and catch those songs and catch that creativity with a snap of a finger, because you're so in tune with your emotions and you're in tune with how you work and your craft. And yeah, I think that solely just comes from the 10,000 hours kind of model. So
That's so well said. That's so good. With the band though, as that is some time in the game,
Mhm.
do you have any memories of like milestones? Like as it's coming together, little bits of like, okay, maybe it's working, or little bits where maybe you perfected something that wasn't right. Or, just like, do you have those memories of certain
Sure.
chapters?
Yeah, there's a few. I guess our like biggest one was with this song called Swim. It was on our very first EP called This Room Is White. And that whole EP was a big discovery piece for us. So kind of talking about kind of the 10,000 hours thing, it's like that was our first kind of like chip in the wall, kind of building this thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
with that EP, we were kind of feel like a whole different band. Like at the time, I was singing, Kara was singing, even Mickey was singing some songs like lead, and it was just a whole kind of different dynamic. But and like sometimes, we'll look back on that EP and be like, oh man, that like doesn't feel like us anymore. That felt so like it's so different from where we are now. But I've realized I'm so thankful for putting that EP out, because that was the first time we put out a song, our first single called Swim, where like we saw a global impact. And like and I talked about like getting 500 plays. I remember like Swim dropping, and I think on like SoundCloud, I remember it got like 1,000 plays, and then we were like, wow, that's crazy, like 1,000 people, this is nuts. And then from there on Spotify, it hit like the viral 50 charts, and like it just started going up. And I think that song is like the very first piece of our story where like we were like, okay, this people clearly care, and like it's not just in our hometown, it's in Korea, it's in Australia. Like we're seeing these numbers just kind of start bubbling, and that was a big moment. I think Swim coming out really like was the trampoline to kind of start having us kind of take on like a whole new kind of perspective on our career. But that's a big one.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and then selling out like our first hometown show, that was crazy, because like we grew up playing at like YMCA and like skate parks and stuff. Like we played to like just like our friends like anywhere we could.
Yep.
But like selling tickets and like selling out our first show, and like random people that we don't even know showing up and like screaming our like first EP songs, like it was just nuts. Like we didn't know how to process that. So I'm really thankful that EP. There's a stage where I was like, man, like that EP is like so different from where Valley is now. And like sometimes artists I feel like can feel a little embarrassed, and that's natural. Like any creative environment, you're gonna look back on your work and be like, that could be better. This could have changed. But after a lot of reflection, I've realized that EP was like one of the most memorable times of our lives. I think things were also simpler back then. We were just like making music, and there was a lot less overthinking with the internet not being as prominent at the time. And yeah, it just had a really just memorable kind of imprint on our lives. And yeah, that's one of them.
You said that was The Room Is White?
This Room Is White. Yeah.
This Room Is White. Yeah. That's wild. Because what is that, 2016?
2016 or 2015? Yeah, I guess we started recording it in like 2015. But yeah,
God, I love that era so much. That was such a magical era. Because you're right, you said that so well. It's like the internet was there. It was a tool. It was discovery, but it didn't feel so heavy and serious. And I don't know.
Like, I remember going on Instagram, but like I don't remember being on it for hours. Like I remember just kind of like, once a day scrolling through it, maybe at lunch, but like I don't remember being so involved. And like, I don't know, this morning I woke up and I was on TikTok for an hour. I don't know why. I just was. Like it's I think back, and like it was just a different, like it's crazy to say it was a different time because it's not even that long ago, but that just goes to show how much like has changed in just a few years, world pandemic including. But but I mean.
Yeah. What a while. I want to get to that because I think it's really interesting to be a band that goes through that. I mean, every band, every artist that I've talked to has. But like this, everything you're saying right here is so good. So the selling out the show.
Yeah. For sure.
That's awesome to me. How many years in was that? That was still around 2016.
Uh,
That's like the album or the EP is coming out,
yeah.
and then that's happening.
Well, pretty much, yeah. That was our first like official show. We actually, I mean, secret here, but not secret, I guess, but exclusive. But we actually put out one EP before that, but it got taken down because that was like our real kind of like experimental phase, and like we were really still figuring stuff out. So before that, we did put out an EP and like played one show in Toronto, but and it was mostly like friends and family. You know how it goes, and like let's get everyone's aunt and uncle to fill the room, and then thumbs up, we sold it out. But this room is
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that was at the Mod Club, I believe, in Toronto, which was an iconic venue for us to play at the time. Like we saw all our
Yeah,
favorite.
I've been
It was
there.
nuts. So we played that, and like that sold out right after the EP came out. So yeah, that was that night. I think we were all like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, damn. That's so like those encouraging moments, man. Like it's always a bit of a grind and you're always perfecting the craft, but
Mhm.
it's just so cool to have those very specific moments where you're like, you know what? Actually, yes, this. I remember this so well.
Mhm.
And as that happened, did that give you guys like a new like motivation or pressure? Like as you're starting to process that, did it change the dynamic in any good way or bad way? Or like, was it more just like, cool, fuel for the fire, keep going?
Yeah. I think for a second there was a moment of like, okay, we really want to do this, but like, where do we go from here? And at the time, we had like our first
Yeah.
manager managing us from New York, and like, you know, stuff was starting to happen. And he found us just off Twitter, like randomly. Like, I think
Whoa.
Swim came on his like playlist or something on SoundCloud. And then from there, he messaged us on Twitter. So that happened.
Sick.
And then, yeah, I guess we were starting to realize like, okay, we need a manager. That's step one. Like these were early days. So we're like, okay, I guess we need a manager. And like, what else can we, you know, okay, maybe an agent to start booking some shows. So we were beginning to kind of feel the pressure of like, oh, this is like with it, the things becoming like a business more like, or not that our band is not a business, but like with all this stuff happening, we're going to need people working for us. And there's more layers to just like, you know, playing music all the time. So there were those pressures, but we got through them. And you know, any new artist or band has to, you know, go through those things. But on the other side of the coin, we were also kind of battling, not battling, but just figuring out stylistically where we're going to go. And like I said, Mickey was still singing on that first EP, and Mickey kind of stepped down from singing, and like I kind of took on more the role of singing with Kara, and like we were just kind of having those kind of conversations, which at first were difficult because, you know, we had a certain flow and stuff going, but we're all such a collaborative band. We all studied music production and songwriting, and we're, you know, very involved as a group of people. So those decisions weren't as hard as maybe it would be for other band or artist, but we those were kind of the few things going on, but we got through them. It was just a little bit of, you know, growing up, I guess.
It's just growth. Yeah, it's just natural growth.
So we had to figure it out, and now, you know, we have a lovely team and have been working with some people for a really long time on our team. And that's another thing that I think is super important is like, you know, sticking with your,
tell me about
day
that.
ones. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but kind of keeping people around you that have been with you before maybe like some more successes happen or something, I think is really important in grounding. I think any like major celebrity would tell you that like, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have, you know, my one friend from high school or grade school that, you know, knows me before all this happened. That's like a kind of an anchor, I think, for your mental health and sometimes emotional processing in this crazy industry. So
you're so right. You do hear that so often. So another spot of band growth in this whole story, and I think something that's cool to talk about is all these milestones start happening, people start taking notice. And as a band, you're kind of faced with these moments of like, I'd say the main three is booking agent, label, manager. And those are really important choices to make. And hopefully done right can really level you up. I think more so now than ever, you can go independent and you can do it without some of those pieces. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer there, but how did that, like, at what point did all of your pieces kind of start falling into play? Were you guys chasing getting signed? Like, did you have those moments,
Mhm.
and how did that play into it?
Yeah, so shortly after, I believe we played that sold out show at the Mod Club in Toronto, EP was out. We had a manager at the time named Sam. We were kind of just like figuring out what our next steps. So we did sign with an agent after that show, I believe. I think it was, yeah, shortly after. And we were starting to kind of figure out, oh, we're going to tour Canada, or we're going to start playing some more shows. And from there, Universal Canada kind of started kind of reaching out and kind of figuring out what's going on, what's the deal, what's the story, and kind of how that happened is crazy too. So at the time, our current A&R was like interning at the label. So he wasn't, I don't think he was even getting
Yes.
paid. He was just kind of like at the label trying to, get a job there. He actually put us forward to our old A&R at the label and was like, "Hey, I found this band Valley." And I believe he found us on Twitter as well. So just like we're talking about the digital age, like it did help us as well. So that's something I wanted to get to too. Like obviously the world has changed digitally and internet, but like it did help us. So no shade there. But yeah, basically his name's Matt. He like showed it to our old A&R Don, was like, you have to listen to these guys. And then Don from there was like, okay, I guess some intern kid. I'm not going to listen. But then I think he did listen. And then he was like, oh boy, okay, we need to get these guys to do a showcase. So in our current studio that we rehearse at now, they like set up this whole showcase where a bunch of label people came in. It was the most nerve-wracking thing we've ever done, because we're still like, we're not that old. Like we're like shaking. We're like, oh my gosh, we're playing in front of like the president, all these A&Rs, all these people, and there's like no real, like they don't clap after songs. It's just like they just stare at you while you play music. So very nerve-wracking, but we played the showcase, and from there, they're pretty much like, we would love to bring you on board with Universal Music Canada. So we've been with them pretty much since that first EP, since that big kind of milestone moment. So they've been a huge part of our story and development. And yeah, and now picture, like full circle, Dawn left to be like a studio manager at Universal, and the intern Matt is now our A&R. So full circle. So just the
Let's
best
go.
feeling ever. I remember when we got the call and Don was like, "Hey, like I'm actually gonna give the job to Matt now, and like he's gonna be our A&R." So like literally, the intern that found us is now just our main homie at the label, and just like our band dad, pretty much.
So you have like this shared come up story or feeling as well.
Yeah,
Like you guys probably both appreciate it on both
100%.
sides. Like he's probably so invested in
Oh,
it,
Matt's the best.
and
Yeah,
you have that day one
there's such
trust.
like an emotional thread we feel with him. And yeah, I can't say enough nice things about Matt. He just, it's a whole different relationship when yeah, exactly, you just nailed it. Like the come up is the same. So when I'm dealing with like label things with him, it feels like personal in like the best way. It doesn't feel like
Yeah.
as transactional, maybe as like, some bigger artists have to deal with so many people at a label. But our family here in Canada at the label is pretty tight knit. Like everyone knows each other, and we all kind of, bump into each other in the city all the time. So it's a kind of a family event that way. But
Man, I feel like Canadians are just nicer in general. I feel like there's just like I don't know, man. I hear these things and I'm
we
like, man,
try.
that's so
We
rad.
try. I mean, you know, where are you actually located? Like, are you in LA?
I'm in
Oh, nice.
Los Angeles.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I from the East Coast, grew up in Florida, so very different
oh, for sure.
upbringing and all that. And don't get me wrong, like I like both places a lot, but you do notice, like depending on where you're at regionally,
For
like the way people interact with each other, the way people talk to each other, the values of people,
sure.
like it's a noticeable
Yeah,
thing.
with touring, I mean that I see that a lot. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah.
My perspective is like there's good people everywhere, and I hope that rings true. But I could see how Canada has the nice guy, nice gal kind of attitude and perspective. But yeah, I mean, we try to be nice. I don't know.
Yeah.
Least we
It's
can
like
do.
such a funny, yeah, like of all like stereotypes or all that, like to just be like, yeah, like we're nice people. Like that's so funny. Like that's
It's
such a
very,
funny stereotype to be associated to
we're
Canada.
pretty lucky, I guess, with that title. I hope it doesn't change, but we're trying.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Yeah. So, okay, beautiful. Your team got assembled, but it's not even like that was the make or break thing. You guys were already building your own success and your own traction. And then that naturally kind of just aligned as you progressed, huh?
Yeah. We were, by the time like all the paperwork and everything happened with the actual signing to Universal, we were already like pretty much ahead with like we were much more artistically sound at that point. Mike started Mickey. I mean, we call him Mickey and Mike for context for anyone listening. Uh,
Oh, okay,
Mickey's his
cool.
nickname, but yeah, Mickey stepped down from singing and like we kind of like figured out what the roles are going to be a little bit more at least live and kind of on record. And yeah, and then we started kind of building the next era for our band because we were kind of like, okay, This Room Is White was cool. Let's kind of like lay that to rest for a bit and let's kind of now work on the next thing. We're signed to the biggest label in Canada now. Let's like kind of figure out what's next for us. And that's how the Maybe era began. And that's what really kind of started, moving things for us. And
that was a whole other chapter of
our
like, oh,
debut
cool,
album.
it's doing stuff.
So we were already starting to write our debut album before they even signed us. So we were all kind of already bubbling up kind of that album and getting it ready. So because we knew as soon as they signed us, we want to get right to work on that debut and drop it. Kind of that be our first statement as a band, newly on the label, and kind of that was the first thing we worked on.
And that album is what, like 2019-ish?
Yeah, it came out in parts, so it kind of like, I think it crossed 2018, 2019, but because we did, Maybe was put out in sides, so it was like side A, side B, and then there was like a side, like a deluxe side, and then it all came together at the end. So now on Spotify, it's just like one long...
oh, that's cool.
One record, yeah. So we spaced it out because we were doing a lot of touring while it was dropping, so we wanted to kind of have these moments with it. We actually stole it.
That's a really smart idea.
Yeah, we stole it from John Mayer. But hey, great art imitates great art. What's the saying? I don't even know. But
imitation is the highest form of flattery.
Yeah. Wow, I really butchered that as an artist.
I kind of liked yours. I was like, dang, I need that one.
Write it down. But yeah, John Mayer was doing. There you go. John Mayer was doing like these waves at the time. He was like dropping like these little like wave things that he like was just a few songs at a time, and we were just like, that's great. Let's do like sides. So we did side A, B, and kind of a C deluxe. So yeah, that's kind of the first thing we worked on with the label, and so proud of that. I think Maybe was like, to this day I listened to it and like there's no other first debut album we could have dropped like that. It holds up as like Valley's first debut, and it's exactly what we wanted to say and do at the time. And I think we're so lucky with Universal. They allowed us, and to this day, Universal, and now we're working with Capitol as well in the States. So we kind of, that whole thing happened. But Universal has just really given us so much creative reign and so much trust and like compassion to our art and like how we make things. And I cannot say enough about like getting that kind of creative hall pass, I guess you could call it, or something, to just be ourselves unapologetically. And with that debut album, they basically were like, hey, go make an album, come back, deliver it, and let's go. So, that's what we did. We went to LA and New York and wrote with a bunch of friends and people, and came back and produced it all in our little basement at Mike's parents' house. Very basic setup, and we just did it all there with our friend Andy, who kind of co-produced the debut, and then delivered it, and then that's it. And like that's honestly some of the best memories I think to this day as a band, is just like getting that green light to just be like, go make your debut album and come back with something special. And like we came back with a 16 song album with like transitions and like it was basically a movie. Like Maybe is really like a movie without picture.
This is why I'm so glad to be talking to you right now, because as I was like the uneducated fan, I didn't put that together. I didn't understand that. I liked it, right? Like listening, I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, I like this band. I like these songs. But when you hear that, like for me now, the first thing I'm going to do when we get done with this is I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen to it front to back and be like, oh, I get it, right?
Please do. I love when people tell me that. They're like, oh, I listen to Maybe top to bottom. I'm like, that's honestly how it was intended to be listened to. Very much like a story.
That's the thing.
Intro, outro, like it just has all the little bits to make it kind of as cinematic as we wanted it to be. That really was like a movie for us to make through sound.
Well, I really love hearing that, because I think that great art is something that can be consumed on a surface level and enjoyed, but then as like a real deep fan, or as you go dig deeper into it, when you find the layers and when you find, you're like, wait, they thought about this, they cared, this ties to this, ties to this, ties to this. There's nothing more rewarding than finding that in your favorite artist or in art that you
That's
like.
what we did.
So when
That's the best.
creators take the time to do that, I just have so much respect for it, because it's all too easy to phone it in these days.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. I think, as I was saying, like, that's what we did with our favorite artists. I would finding through lines. I think through lines for us is like really important in our music and our visuals. All our visuals have little through lines. I don't even think all our fans like see all of them, because we hide a lot of that stuff. And like even our like maybe has so many through lines. Like the intro has like lyrical ties to the outro, and like a lot of the songs reference each other lyrically. And that's something that we've like always loved since day one. And bands like Coldplay do it really well, and like the 975, and just like that stuff just really hits, I think, a listener. And like that's the pushing point of like a listener or a consumer becoming like a fan, like someone like someone that's invested in you beyond just the surface level, you know. Because I listen to a lot of artists daily, but there's like a select few that I've like put my time and soul into, and like really went through their discography and like believe so much. And I think that is a product of like looking for those through lines, and like artists putting time into connecting everything. I think that's super important. And I don't think every artist should do it. Like it's not a requirement. There's no requirement to making great art. But for us personally, that's what we consumed growing up with other artists. So that's what we kind of put back out into the world as almost a respect. So our next like project has through lines, and then we're already writing our second record, and like literally the opening song right now has like 50 references to our first record. Like there's so many little lines and stuff. So 50 is over exaggerating, but just a lot. So we're always thinking about that. We always want our listeners and those people that have like really invested in our band to you know, be laying in their bed or driving and being like, whoa, like I've heard that line, or I've heard that sound, or they've used that before, and like it's recycled in this like beautiful way in another song. Those are like light bulb moments, I think, for listeners that just like make them feel so heard and more invested.
Well,
I don't know.
Perhaps I could add to what you're saying and say that as the artist, as the creator, you don't have to do that. Make your art however you see fit. But maybe you're hedging your bet when you do things like that, and you put that much time and care and through lines into something to turn listeners into fans.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that an artist could think with, of like, this is another way to take a surface level listener and gives you a chance to make a real fan. Whereas maybe that's a missed opportunity if there isn't deeper through lines and meanings.
100%. Yeah, it's so important.
That's
like
cool.
We were talking about like movies and like the kind of, you know, maybe is a very cinematic album, and we are very influenced by like pop culture and just TV and movies. Like that's a huge impact on our writing lyrically, specifically. Us doing that and maybe kind of came from like Marvel does that really well. I don't know if you're from like into Marvel movies, but like for the longest time, like I believe Stan Lee like was in the
oh yeah, he would always show up as a cameo.
And I think that's like such a little thing that like, let's say like my parents will watch a Marvel movie and not notice that, but like someone that's invested and knows that that's coming, that just makes you feel such a love, like even more of a love for the art and the detail. And like Hitchcock did that too. Like Hitchcock would like star in the background of his like shorts and stuff sometimes, and he would just like appear somewhere. And like, I don't know, I just love that idea. So that's kind of our Stan Lee moment or something, where we just kind of like, we'll throw in a lyric or a sound or take something from another past kind of era of Valley. And yeah, that's just like so part of our DNA. And I don't think we'll ever stop doing that. You know, sometimes we'll maybe do it less, but that's just us again, exploring and discovering. But we're always going to find ways to like find through lines, I think, as a band.
Yeah, that's really cool to understand even further in that. And I don't know, it's like kind of that reminder too that there's not really rules when you're making and creating stuff. There's guidelines and there's structure, but the more you can kind of challenge and break rules in creative ways or add your own twist to things, like that just evolves music and art as a whole.
Yeah.
So again, like that's cool when anyone can do that. I love that.
Yeah.
And you kind of answered this. I was going to ask you, like, just more directly, like, what the songwriting process is the band. And I feel like you kind of did touch into it, but has it always been a pretty collective thing? Like, do you work with producers or is it pretty much just y'all? Like, what's that like?
So with This Room is White, we wrote that pretty much entirely ourselves and produced it all in just Mickey's parents' basement. They were gracious enough to give us a studio, and like we still work there all the time. And with our debut album, Maybe, we wrote most of that ourselves with the help of Andy Seltzer to come in, who's a dear friend of ours, to help produce. He kind of co-produced that with us and did some writing together. He's kind of like the secret fifth member of the band. He's awesome. But
Cool.
so we've always been open to collaboration, but like I said, like we studied a little bit of music production and a little bit of like engineering and stuff before we dropped out to do Valley. So we have a background on that really helped us kind of develop our own style and sound for producing. So right now, like the next body of work, and then like Sucks to See You Doing Better, our latest EP, we produced pretty much entirely ourselves. Mickey will be on the laptop and I'll do stuff in Logic, and then Alex will, is also engineering, and Kara even engineers and stuff and does, so much cool stuff production wise, and she's just like a genius. So yeah, we're all kind of involved very heavily. It's not as I say this a lot, but it's like I find our situation is so unique, like just the way we met, but also just the dynamic. I find with a lot of bands specifically, there's more walls put up, and I don't think that it's intentionally. It's just like everyone kind of follows their strength. So, you know, the lead
Yeah.
singer will come with the songs, and then the band will be like, "That's cool. Let me write a guitar part." And then the bassist, "Oh, I'll write the bass part to it." Like it's kind of like, oh, everyone just has their role, and sometimes they cross. But with Valley, it's like there's no roles assigned. Like there's roles assigned live. Like I have to sing the song with Kara, and she's drumming, and Mike has to do synths and stuff, and Alex plays bass. But in the studio, it's like there's choruses that I didn't write that Kara wrote, or like Mickey wrote the bridge, or Alex wrote the guitar part. Like we're so multi kind of versed in that way, and that's kind of the way we've done it forever. And then if we're collaborating with people, we'll work with like other writers and other artists a lot too. We love writing with other artists. I think that's where you get a lot of magic, when two artists kind of get in a room, or two bands, and like you just start making stuff. So always doing that. All of our pretty much anything we put out in the world is usually in collaboration with someone, either writing or maybe some production. But we're super proud of like producing a lot of our stuff, and we do it all like just in Mickey's basement, like parents' basement still. So we can kind of do it anywhere, which I really love, because even on the road we can produce and write. And yeah, that's another thing with the digital kind of age that we're in that's so awesome. Like there's so many positives. Like we can make a record anywhere now. Like we don't go to a studio anymore. I could do it in my room.
Yeah.
That advantage has helped a lot for our band.
Yeah. I think it's cool, like hearing that, because I'll talk to so many solo artists on this podcast, right? Well, they'll learn their own production, or maybe it's more of like the hip hop leaning side or whatever. And you really, all you need is a laptop and yourself. But to hear that translated into a full band is actually super, super sick to me,
Yeah.
to hear that, because I feel like certain times bands can be like, well, we're a band, so we can't do that. We have to go here or there. So hearing you explain that, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
I think that's kind of I think for me, the new kind of wave, especially for bands. Like solo artists, it's a little different. And there's cons to that too. Like I feel for a lot of solo artists. Like we have a lot of friends that are solo artists, and like it gets lonely, and you have to do a lot of stuff yourself. Like we have each other in a band to lean on. Like, if I'm feeling sick one day and I don't want to do an interview, Mickey or Kara can take it. And like there's so much leniency there, and compassion for each other. But with a solo artist, it's like you're kind of, it's all on you. And like I feel that pressure for artists in that situation, and like it's a lot to handle. So I'm also very grateful for our dynamic and our chemistry. I think our chemistry is something I hold very close to my heart. Beyond everything, beyond any success or anything we have in the future, our chemistry is what I think keeps us together. And like the fact that, it's not just me bringing the full song to the band and being like, this is the song, learn it. I don't want to change anything. Like the fact that we can all look at each other and be like, hey, like this could be better, or I'm going to write a better part for this, or maybe you do the drum part here, or Kara, can you do the piano part? Like it's all collaborative. And that's how the chemistry happens, and the respect and the compassion and like the empathy for each other's ideas. I think that's really important for bands specifically. And I think that's why, I don't know if that's why there's like less bands nowadays. Like I still feel like there's a lack of bands, and I might be wrong. Like, there's a lot
Yeah,
of
it's
bands, but like I grew up in like the Vans Warped Tour era in high school. So like there was just like
same.
so many pop punk bands and pop rock bands and stuff that I was consuming all the time and loved. But now it feels, yeah, like I feel like there's a little bit of a lack of bands, but I know there's so many out there. And I don't know. I feel like we're we're a prime example that like just things don't have to be as like boxed. I find with a lot of bands, even growing up, it was like that, where it's like the singer, the guitarist, the bassist, the drummer. And like, I don't know. It's just like now anything is possible, I think, dynamically. And I think we're also getting much more interesting bands. And I think that's what's so fun is like there's so many just incredibly talented people out there that are like inspiring and blowing our minds every day. So
Dude, I love the way you said that. And I think it's more like, yeah, there are bands. There
oh yeah.
totally are. But I think right now, at least just the common trends and what we've been seeing more of in the spotlight is solo
Sure.
artists. And I'm sure that's cyclical. I'm sure there's ebbs and flows and all
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
that. But it really gives me hope and excitement hearing you explain the modern day version of being in a band that takes care of each
Mhm.
other. Cause you're so right. And like for me, even like my start to music was tour managing my best friends, like getting into
That's
a
so
15
awesome.
passenger van
Oh,
and going out and
I
doing
love
that.
that.
And you're so right. Like there are those days where you're just not on and you have all of each other to lean on. And you have this, maybe even this added sense of
Mhm.
confidence because you have all these people that believe in you and that are so excited to be there doing it together where that is kind of magic. And I really never thought about that as a solo artist is you do kind of lose some of that experience, don't you?
It's so true. Yeah. And that's something I've recently reflected on because like I said, like I have a lot of artists, friends that are, solo projects. And it's like, they often remind me, they're like, oh yeah, but like you have like Karen, Mickey and Alex to like, help you on a bad day or to help with this or to, maybe help with some business logistics stuff that, is kind of draining. Like, you know, that's all there and we're all there to help each other. So very grateful, very lucky. And I'm
Yeah.
counting my blessings every day for that.
That that's no, that's really, really cool. And
Yeah.
it's like another level of doing this podcast with you right now is like I'm in real time kind of blown away by that because I love having a conversation, not knowing where it's gonna go, and personally leaving it with a new like insight or way of thinking. And you just did that to me where I'm like, damn sick.
That
Yeah,
makes me
that's
so
tight.
happy.
So
I would love to
no,
know
it's
more
cool.
about kind of your background. I feel so rude just talking about myself, but
Well, no, no. It's as the podcast. I always say this, like when a listener is tuning in because they want to know about Valley. They
for
want to
sure.
know about you. There's plenty time I can do an episode. I can talk about me. So I hate it when hosts make it all about them.
Oh, for
But
sure.
that's very kind of you. And we did kind of miss a spot where in the beginning, like you got right at Valley. So we'll really quick right here. I'll tell you my super short TLDR, and then I want to hear about your Warp Tour
Oh
days.
yeah.
So mine was cars and skateboarding till 16. My best friend started a band in Florida and
Wow.
I can't play at all. So then uh, they just knew I was like good at like business and logistics. And you're like, you want to come sell shirts and help us get around? And I was
I
like,
love
yeah, sounds
that.
fun. And then it was like super fun. The band got signed. We traveled all over. I then worked at a record label and blah, 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 got to here. So that's my like 2 second version. What is your early days? How did you like, were you like full Warp Tour kid as well?
Yeah, I was like somewhere in the middle. Like I think after like in grade school, like I think grade 7, 8, when I like kind of had my own independence of like choosing the music I can listen to and stuff. Like my parents just like tossed me like classics growing up. So like I was lucky to like, have Motown and 70s rock and all the Brit pop stuff my parents gave me. But I remember grade 7, grade 8, I was like, oh man, like Blink 182 and like Bowling for Soup and
Yes.
like My
Yes.
Chemical Romance. I'm like, this is music that's like making me feel right now. Like I feel this angst and like anger and like I'm like probably like getting over like
Dude.
a relationship in grade 8 or grade 7. Like I'm just like sitting in my room like jamming to like Helena or something. I don't know. Whatever or Black
I'm not
Parade.
kidding. Literally, last night, I had this conversation with a friend where I didn't realize her first album of like, whoa, this is crazy, was Enema of the State by Blink.
Ugh,
And we had this moment
perfect
where it's
album.
like, that was the first album that I heard where I was like, oh, this music is different from the radio, or like it felt like relatable to me, or like I found this hidden
Yeah.
thing. And she had that same moment. And it's like, it's so
There's like a whole
crazy that these
other
specific albums.
relatability, and I think that's why I gravitated toward like a lot of Vans Warped Tour bands, like more of the popular side, because I know there was like so much like going on at those on those tours. There's so many subgenres and like metal and post
Yeah.
metal and like pop rock and punk pop, but I was like really into like the Maine and like Mayday Parade and like A Rock to the Moon, like just kind of like bands that were doing pop songwriting. Like it was very well written music, but just like almost disguised with like heavier guitars and stuff and like more kind of like of that kind of production. But that's what like really like I gravitated towards. And like those like Vans Warped Tour, like that whole era of music, and it's weird to call it like an era, like it's in the past, but like it kind of feels like that was like its own moment. Had a huge impact
I
on me.
know.
Those were, that was the first time I heard like more pop music in that kind of context. And Blink 182 even are like such well written pop songs, but they're just done in a way that feel, at least for me, felt so much more relatable to like, I don't know, a kid in grade 9 or in high school, like working a shitty part-time job in like a suburb. Like Tom DeLonge was like, and Mark were like singing to me. Like that's I think a big part of like that era of music. And like, I don't know, they just like sang about really like relatable, sometimes silly things. That's like, man, like I feel that more than maybe like a song I'm hearing on the radio right now. Like I just like really feel like the connection with the lyrics and just kind of I don't know, it just felt like they were just everyone on Vans Warped Tour and like in Blink, and just they all just felt like kids that just like played in their mom's basement and then by fluke like kind of got in a van, started touring, and then success happened.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, there's just such a relatability to the unfilteredness of it. It was just kind of like say it
Yeah.
as it is and put it in 3 minutes and some guitars.
It was so human, and you're right. Like it felt so relatable, and I think that inspired. I mean, you talk to so many artists that are around our age, and hearing stories similar to this, right? Like the Blink 182s, the Green Days,
Green Day
all
was
of the
huge
Warped
for
Tour
us. I
era.
forgot. How did I forget about talking
Yeah,
about Green Day? Green Day was big for
dude.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all that similar era. And it's like, I don't know, it just made it so much more accessible. And I think you're right. Like it made it feel like any friends could just get in a van and like play music. And even for me being terrible at music and not good
Mm,
at it, it made me feel like, oh, here's a community. And here's like where a bunch of friends can get together and feel like themselves.
exactly.
And that feeling early on in your age or in your teenage years. And
Mm.
I don't know. I just think there's something important
Green
there. I
Day,
think it's
like
really, really
full
cool.
circle, like Green Day was doing through lines too. Like when American Idiot came out, that is like a beautiful concept record. Like I remember when we were talking about maybe and making our debut, like American Idiot was a reference in terms of just like the arc of it and like how like angry but and frustrated that album sounded, but also how poppy and how beautiful crafted the writing was. And that's like another band that like changed me and Alex's life. Like Alex like covered Green Day at high school talent shows like every year. Like that was his thing. Like because yeah, they were speaking to us. And like not even that, but they're like my parents are like immigrants from Europe. Like they immigrated to Canada. And like even for them, like listening to like rock music that actually had like it was frustrating and it had intent, but it had pop melodies. Like it's like I can listen to this and it's like an earworm, but like this guy's like frustrated here right now. And like he has a message that he's trying to get across that's like more complicated than like maybe something that they were used to hearing. So I don't think all those little Easter eggs being planted in our brains of like that kind of era of music was really important. It was very freeing, and it made us kind of like, imagine a world outside of this like tiny suburb outside of Toronto. I know Jack Antonoff from Bleachers always talks about this, like growing up in New Jersey, and like being in the shadow of New York City. Like that's kind of what like California and all, and like San Diego and all these places that these bands are coming from. And like Green Day was Oakland, California, I believe. So it's like it made us just like daydream that like, man, if we just got in a van and did this here, like we could probably do that too. Like because that's all they did. Like they just kind of grew up,
Dude.
just got in a van and just started doing it. They were just like wanted to play music for the rest of their lives. So very formative years. And I think that's what I was saying when like there's not enough bands. I didn't mean that in a disrespectful way. There's so many bands now, but like that era of bands was like very special when you really look back on it. And that's also due to not having so much social media. And there was just this like, I don't know, free, like almost like hippiness to it. It was like the revival of like Woodstock in a way, but like, I don't know. It just felt very,
dude, I
like that was
I feel it.
that was our
Yeah.
moment for like, at least for like 90s born kids. Like that was what we looked at as like the like Woodstock, like the like where people were just like, we're gonna do this, get in a van, we're gonna play shows wherever we can. And like, I don't know. It's just really special.
And I think both you and I could agree, like us talking about it and reminiscing like that is not to like shake a stick at it and be like the new age and social
Oh,
media and the
no.
internet and it's all wrong.
sure.
Like, no, hell yeah. Like what's happening right now in music is
great.
sick, but it's just really cool to look back and see like there was a slight difference and to see how inspiring that was and what we learned from that. Because the thing that I was going to say to you is like, you realize that you very well could be doing this to a whole new generation of kids right now. Like just by y'all doing Valley,
Yeah.
there's probably kids that are picking up their first instruments that are referencing you and that are being like, damn, they did this, this, and this like this. And that's wild to think about too.
It makes me like, I honestly tear up when thinking about that. Cause that's like, I don't know. I just see myself and Alex and Mickey and Kara like looking at Green Day or something and being like, okay, I'm going to learn American Idiot right now. Let's like, and I'm like sitting in front of my parents' Dell computer with guitar tabs being like, okay, this really hurts my fingers. That just makes me so happy that someone might be doing that and being like, oh, I'm going to learn this Valley song. And like, yeah, it's incredible. We're so lucky to have lived
cool.
through that. We have to consider ourselves lucky to like grow up at a time where like just before phones were controlling us and like we just had a little bit of insight on that kind of era of music. But yeah,
Dude, sometimes like on this podcast, I'll have certain guests that can speak to that so well. And I'll so selfishly like deep dive and ask questions where it's just things like I had Chris Georgian who toured with Blink 182 and managed them during like the era, or Kevin Lyman that started Warped Tour. And like these little moments where I'm like, tell me this. And it's like, and it's purely just me needing to fan out and needing to hear these things because I barely scratched the surface of experiencing it to the level that certain people did, but we idolized those moments.
No, it's a big part of our band culture for sure.
I think the best way to conclude this episode, though, is we're talking about this and how that you could be paying it forward, or there could be this next generation that's inspired by you. So if you were to be in that position where somebody is listening to this and they do look to you as inspiration and the band and everything you're doing, what advice would you give to that person that's looking to get it going and sees everything that you're doing and maybe even looks back at the Green Day days and all of that?
For sure. Oh man, I feel like I always try to prepare like an answer and it never pans out because like
I prefer it to be more candid anyway.
Oh man. It's so much pressure because it's never one thing. It's many pieces of little advice.
That's true.
I mean,
that's very true.
I mean, we touched on it earlier. I think there's a lot of planning and kind of overthinking. I think, especially anyone that's listening right now, that's maybe well into their career or scared of taking the next step, or even just like doesn't know where to start. I think the greatest resource is other people and the world that we have now presented in front of us. And again, it sounds like contradicting to what we've been talking about, but we're just talking about just the general change of things that have happened in the media and digital age and music and whatever. But I think one of the greatest resources for me was just human connection and in people, and meeting people that I actually could feel a connection with, and that went beyond those records and Green Day and all those bands we just talked about. Those were people that influenced me but didn't seem reachable. But if you could find people in your hometown, in your school, in your skate park, and wherever you show up, do it, because you just never fucking know what's going to happen. That's what happened to me. I just show up every day and just try and don't stop. I think that's the one through line. I've spoken to so many people at different points in their careers. Some people that are extremely successful, or some people that just the perspective has always been the same. No matter who I've talked to and taken advice from, is just show up every day, don't stop, put your 10,000 hours in, learn. There's so many resources now on the internet and the world. Even TikTok is such an amazing resource. I know people shit on TikTok all the time, but I learned so much off TikTok, like about music production and stuff, and following pages. So just, yeah, find people that you resonate with, and value that over anything else, because everything else can be rearranged, planned, like that all can fall into place once you have a burning passion, and like have people around you that will support you and bring out the best in you. I'm so lucky that I found, my bandmates. And for you, that, if whoever's listening, that might look different. It might be, just friends that can support you and work for you. I mean, we're talking about how you just jumped in a van and became a tour manager. Like,
changed my life. Literally that moment changed my life. And you're right. It was just friends. It was having real friends.
Just find those people that you can have, genuine dreams with, and connection and compassion with. And I promise that will be the thread that holds everything else together. We're living in an age where everything else can just happen. You can get discovered through a DM. You could put up a song on Spotify and it just take off. Like, you can't predict viralness or success or anything. But the one thing that, like, your Instagram app or whatever can't buy is like genuine human connection. You could definitely form connection, but just practice taking that further and building relationships. I think that's going to be the most important piece to your career, is just having people around you that believe you and love you and will give you the resources and the strengths that you don't have to do what you love. So, very long-winded answer, but I think just people, just surround yourself with great people that you align with. That's what I'll say.
Beautiful.
Oh.
That was so well said. That you're like over here, like, oh, I don't know anything off the top.
I'm just kind of running with it, but I do genuinely believe that there's a lot of pieces of advice I've gotten, but I will say the through line is what I just said is the most.
Yeah. And it's so timeless, right? Like that advice, like, who knows what happens with social media and the internet and how things evolve and this and that and this. But like, as long as life exists, human connection is so fulfilling and so important.
Of course.
So I love that. I absolutely love that. Yeah. Dude, thank you so much for doing this podcast. Like, this
more
was
than you probably know. It's so nice just to, like, again, this is to my last point. Like, it's so nice to meet someone and actually have like a genuine conversation for an hour. I know it's a lot about me talking about myself and my career, but I feel like we bonded in a way that I don't usually get to bond. Usually I'm doing interviews and they're like 15 minutes, bang out the questions, and then, okay, see you later. Might never see you again.
Right.
But I think that's to end it, like a podcast. That's why I love podcasts so much. I listen to podcasts all the time, is because I just love being a fly on the wall to a conversation, but B, also just like having the time to actually dive into what we talked about today, I think is so valuable. And I feel like there's a trade-off of knowledge and love, and just, I could not thank you enough. This feels like almost like a therapy session, like for my own, just like, you know what I mean? Like that.
You're so welcome though. And I do feel you, because I actually, as you were saying that, I had a thing to add to what you're saying about human connection. Like, I remember a spot, not like super, super dark, but I was feeling very lost. And I didn't feel like I had those people in my life that I really felt like I wanted to align with. Like, I had these aspirations that were so high, and I couldn't find anyone that like saw it like that. And like podcasts were so massively helpful to me then, because it still felt like human connection. I could still hear these conversations that got me thinking like that. So that's like another cool thing. It's like, that's so cool that you share that, because somebody in search of their people could hear your thing and feel that much more connected when maybe there isn't that in-person connection.
100%.
So thank you for sharing that to whoever hears this.
No, thank you for doing it. Like, podcast, I think, is one of the best inventions ever made. Like just taking what we just did, like, I wasn't on my phone for a whole hour, like you know what I mean, and just like we get to just talk. Like, that's so rare these days. I feel like I go to a meeting, I go anywhere, everyone's kind of always just flustered with these things, and like, I don't know, the fact that like something like this still exists in the world is really nice. Just like a nice hour of conversation, no distractions, and we just get to like, you know, talk. I don't know. I think that's so beautiful. So never stop doing it. And I'm looking forward to listening to more episodes, because I'm a podcast nut. I love it.
Dude, absolutely. Thank you for all of that. And there's some very deep mutual love here. And it's just cool. I'm so glad we connected, because
thanks for the DM.
One more person that gets it. Yeah. So thank you,
then,
internet, for the platform
to make a human connection,
to then give us human connection.
Look at that. Full circle.
Sick. So there it is, Rob's story, the story of Valley, the band. I hope you liked it. If you made it here to the end and you didn't for any reason, shoot me a DM. Let me know what I can improve. And if you did, shoot me a DM. Let me know what you liked about it. And send it to a friend that you think would like the podcast. The entire way this has grown has been word of mouth and sharing it, which has been the coolest thing in the world. That just about says it. I'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you for listening.